Welcome to the Mucked Up My Self-Care podcast.
I'm Jill from New York.
And I'm Linda from Tasmania.
We are two moms from opposite sides of the world who are living, demonstrating, and helping moms across the world build their self-care asset bank.
Ready to dive in? Messy, interrupted, imperfect, and most of all mucked up. Let's get going. Hello, welcome back. So good to be here. Oh, Jill, I can't hear you.
We're back.
Okay.
We hadn't seen each other for a couple of weeks with the holidays.
I know, it's a bit strange, actually.
Very.
We're usually in touch at least, every few days or daily sometimes as well. So, but here we are again, ready to kick it off. And let's start where we always do, with highs and lows.
Definitely. Do you want to start us off, Linda? I think
sure.
You have some good ones to share.
Oh, I have many. I was actually trying to just think about it when I was putting my little one to sleep. So I think a definite high for me is we had the pleasure of a Christmas present, or a joint Christmas present for all of our families, because I've had relatives staying with us, and it was a boat cruise. I wouldn't say cruise. It was a boat journey. So it was a speedboat on the Tasman Peninsula, which has rock formations which are over 250 million years old, and they're just absolutely majestic. So there's caves and like big structures that you get to get up really close to, and we saw dolphins that were right next to us in a boat. We could almost reach out and touch them. Dolphins, and there were seals and albatross, and the kids just had such a wonderful time. So it was a huge day, but definitely well worth it. So
it's so cool.
Wonderful memories. And a low for me, I think, just that whole saying goodbye to extended family when they have to return home and leave to go back to the normal life and stuff. So not really knowing the next time we might see them and that sort of thing, and having the distance between us is, just a bit tricky at times, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you got to have a very unique Christmas this year, because I think that's all around.
That's one way to describe it. And getting a new car, so being able to actually do those sort of things,
yay,
has been amazing as well. What about you?
Oh, good. Well, I think, so my high is going to be Christmas as well. It was just a big Christmas for us, and it was thoroughly enjoyable watching Declan open all of his gifts and the joy on his face for some of the things. It was like the jaw dropped down to like the floor, like you see in a cartoon. Like my kid's face was great. I got the Home Alone look, the two hands with the mouth open, like pure shock for a few different things. And it's just like, this is why we do this, because the joy that's on their faces when they get something that they've been wanting or didn't even know they wanted, or just to see how cool something is. So our Christmas was filled with a lot of joy, and I'm very happy for that this year. Unfortunately, on the low side is also joyful Christmas comes with a melty aftershock, and that navigating that with a 4-year-old is tricky. So the pressures that come of, being a parent, the bills after the fact, and, the cleanup of all the toys and things, and finding homes for the new stuff and having to do returns. And then on top of that, having just a 4-year-old be completely melty from all the excitement and figuring all that stuff out on their own too.
Very out of routine.
Yeah, no school and wanting to go do all kinds of fun things, being off from school for a week earlier already for being on vacation, and then still not having school for 2 more weeks because of the holiday, feels very messy along with the melty. And I'm very much looking forward to school starting up later in the week. Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
definitely a week of self-care before we get back to school.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of self-care, we're actually going to talk today about the 5 benefits of self-care. So
let's just preface this. These are 5 of our benefits that we see frequently. I'm sure there are, other benefits that are out there that we are not going to touch on in this episode. Or
we probably could have done 50, but it would have been a very long episode. And I'm sure the numbers would have dropped off by about,
right.
5 minutes.
There's no studies done. There's, there's just, what have we seen in our life, especially over the last year and a half, almost 2 years of doing this podcast, practicing self-care, talking about self-care. What are those benefits that we've been seeing? So
let's just touch on what you were just talking about and the melty side of things. The benefit of self-care when it comes to melty.
So
moments.
I have seen it help me get through the melty faster. When you actually allow the melty to work through you, and you're like, okay, we're not going to do anything. We're going to I luckily will be able to take a day while Declan is at school and get 4 hours to myself to process, to allow emotions to wash over, to do what they need to do to get through that melty. That's, something I can do for myself. But that's a positive on, benefit for me, is a little bit of self-care can help me get through that melty. Do you find that self-care for you helps you process melty and get through it?
Yeah, it's the energy associated with the melty. So melty is a large explosion sometimes, if you like.
Yeah.
Those that may not have come across the term before. It is an emotional
feeling
reaction.
all the emotions at one time.
Yep. And it ties into a lot of the 5 that we're going to touch on today. But that energy of it really is filling your own cup and getting your energy back again and recovering from big moments and big events and that sort of thing, and just taking that moment to protect yourself in a way, and revive again, so that your energy is not just stuck in a melty mess of quicksand sort of thing. As well.
I like the energy replenishing aspect too. Because our energy, if we are already low on energy, self-care gives us the space to fill that back up or protect it from being drained anymore. And then it's after learning about energy leaks and where they happen and how we can add more self-care into our day to prevent energy leaks or replenish them. That's been, I think, a big benefit for both of us this past year in understanding.
Huge. Okay, so that's one down. Number 2 is the neural pathways.
So I went all sciencey on this one here. But it really does help change your way of thinking of things when you start doing more positive ways to to take care of yourself through self-care. I think one of my examples is the walks that I do to school with Declan. Like, I didn't just challenge us to walk every day to school for the heck of it, or because I thought it would help us be healthier or things like that, but actually healthier in our mindset as well. Like, after talking to a therapist and, trying to figure out how can we change our thoughts, because early on in our episodes we were talking about like our negative thoughts and changing them to positive thoughts, and like how do we actually do that. And taking a walk where I have no distractions of no phone, no conversations, I'm just present, actually helps us change that neural pathway to not be constantly needing to be thinking about something or to be on our phone stimulated, and just be back to present, so that self-care can really help us in redirecting those pathways and bridging some gaps and healing that aspect is what I'm finding through the self-care that I do. I don't know if you've seen any changes with you and in your thought process, especially going from our early episodes where we were talking about things like the negativity that we'd have and trying to change that positive light.
But it's also the acceptance of some of that negative, and that's why we do the highs and lows at the start of each episode. We know that it's just not all sunshines and butterflies sort of thing, and if we're pretending that it is, that can also create extra pressures and problems as well in the pathways and our own brain and psychology as well. So there's so much that we could dive into with this one, like with the science behind it all, and I think it actually needs to be added to our list of episodes as something that we can actually talk about with some research backed up and everything else. So let's keep shuffling along, and we'll put that one in for a future episode. How's that sound?
I like it. So well, our next benefit was, I like how I put this one, I was like, less eggshells. I think it allows us to have our partners feel like there's less eggshells they're walking on, or we might be walking on less eggshells around our partners or our children when we are better spirits from doing some self-care.
That's right. And I think not only for people around us but also for ourselves, it means that we're not quite as on edge and less stress, hopefully, ideally. There's less, we're less likely to be, I call it like the scattered sort of, when eggshells break and they scatter into many pieces and that sort of thing. There's more of that, I feel, when I know that I haven't had enough self-care as well.
Got it. Yeah. We feel more put together and whole instead of our brain all over the place. Yeah,
hopefully. But although that is also sometimes my middle name, so
right along with eye rolls.
Yes. Anyone who knows me for more than 5 minutes might know that, but that's okay. All right. So that's 3 down. Number 4, we had more understanding of yourself and what matters to you, what makes you happier. Tell me what you think when you read that.
Well, I think this podcast itself is proof of that, of what we gained in understanding ourselves better through self-care, and what we find joy in, the things that define self-care for us. So you really get to know, hey, this is not something that brings me joy. It is not filling my cup. The more you practice some self-care. So
Mhm.
I definitely see the benefits in doing self-care to really to know more about ourselves and what we like, what we don't like, and what works for us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. And then, so we're rolling through. So number 5, I've actually put there increased parenting abilities
Yeah.
because I felt like we'd touched on our original 5th one in our first one.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is the compassion and understanding that we can have for our children. I know that when I'm more regulated or more able to see from their point of view, it definitely
Yeah.
helps. And if I'm scattered, much more on the eggshells or have low energy and that sort of thing, it's much harder. And I
Yeah.
think self-care
Yeah.
helps with that.
What is it? When you wrote that and said it out loud, I was like, ooh, helps me be a gentler parent with this whole
Yeah.
gentle parenting movement right now.
And the role models that we're providing for our children as well. Like we're helping
Yeah.
them to learn how to do it.
And,
Which is
with us being in the thick of tantrum world right now,
oof.
it helps us figure out our tantrums. And if, we're less prone to having a tantrum because they're having a tantrum because we did our self-care, we're able to parent in a better light. But when we're not getting that self-care and energy is just completely drained and our neural pathways are like on high alert for stress and all these other things that are just building up, we're not going to be that gentle parent that's understanding. We're going to throw a tantrum right along with them. And yeah, I think self-care can help us for sure increase our parenting abilities.
Yeah, in many ways. Yeah.
And I think there's one last piece that that we benefit from self-care, which we always talk about this podcast being our self-care and having conversations and true friendship. But that definitely is another benefit of self-care, especially when you're able to share your self-care with others. Like that, the joy that we get from conversations and being with friends, that definitely is a benefit of our self-care too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So our combined 5 are definitely number 1 would be the energy and how that can protect us and fill us up and everything else like that. Number 2 is the sciencey one, the neural pathways. 3 is less eggshells. 4 is more understanding of yourself and what matters. And 5 is increased parenting abilities.
Yes.
Just to touch on all of them again. It's just a small handful.
Yes. Yes. And I'm sure this will, well, I'm not sure. I'm hoping this helps encourage listeners to try more self-care to see what their benefits are, because I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of benefits for you listening once you start getting deep into some self-care practices, because you might resonate with some of these. They might trigger you to be like, oh, I need more of that in my life. So that's all we're hoping for. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And Jill, I know that we also did a couple of episodes in number 42 and 43 where we both shared our top 5 self-care activities. Do you remember that, going back a little while now? And these benefits are a little bit different because it's more about the benefits we think self-care are. But if you'd like to go back and listen to 42 and 43, we might put those links just into the show notes there, because they're also really good benefit, good activities you can do for self-care, such as walking or date nights or quiet time or cooking or baking or all sorts of things. So, yeah. So we've reached another episode, the end of another episode. If you do have 5 benefits to you, we'd love to hear them. Feel free to reach out to either Jill or myself. All the details are in the show notes. And until next week.
We hope you can unstuck your Mac.
Bye for now.
Bye.